Interview. We'll bring you back to talk about that discussion. Meantime, hi there. I'm Brooke Baldwin. Right now, this ruthless strike force of jihadi militants. It's on the move in Iraq, capturing yet another city, fighting their way toward Baghdad. So what happens, and this is the big if they make it to Iraq's capital city? What we do know is this, is that Iraq is on the verge of an all-out sectarian war. This terror group, ISIS, slaughtering dozens of Iraqi soldiers, a mass execution in revenge for the loss of one of its commanders. American troops preparing for the worst. Some 100 U.S. Marines are headed to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad as some embassy staffers are moved out. The Obama administration also considering talks with its longtime nemesis, Iran, to look for solutions here to halt this advance of ISIS. Joining me now, our senior international correspondent, Arwa Damon. She is live for us in Erbil, Iraq. And Arwa, let's just begin with, they're just absolutely brutal. These execution videos posted by this ISIS fighter. Can you just walk me through what we're about to see?
It's absolutely chilling, Brooke. We do have to warn our viewers of that. And it really leaves no question as to why these fighters, this ideology needs to be stopped. Now, in this video, you see a bearded man with a gun standing over 5 individuals on their knees. He's calling them Maliki's dogs. He's slapping them around. And then in another part of the video, he wants them to repeat after him, Islamic State here to stay. 2 of the men do repeat it. They comply. The third man struggles to speak. It's as if he's trying to formulate the words, but he can't. He seems to be very dehydrated, almost unaware as to what's happening around him. And then in a video that we cannot show at this stage, you see him dead. His jaw has been blown off. The executioner, the man with the beard, has a Facebook page, Brooke, and he's posted photographs to the Facebook page of that execution. His name is Abu Hamza. He's Tunisian, and he's boasting on this Facebook page about how he killed a Shia. Now, with all the horrific videos and photographs that are coming out of these executions, you know, we often don't know who the victims are, but in this case we did manage to identify the man who couldn't speak. He was 37 years old, a father of 3, Brooke. He had 2 sons and a daughter, and according to people who knew him, he loved his children so much he would do anything for them. In fact, the reason why he took the job as a border guard was so that he could build them a home. Brooke?
The fact that these militants have all these cameras, they know exactly what they're doing. The role of propaganda and social media, we'll delve into that a little later this hour. But Arwa, let me ask you about the U.S. Embassy. It's the largest U.S. embassy in the world. It's almost like its own city. It's a compound. What's being done to shore up the embassy in Baghdad?
Well, the U.S. has historically always been very secretive about its own security measures. We are hearing that they are taking out some of the non-essential staff, relocating them as diplomatic speak goes, sending in additional teams to try to ensure the security of the embassy. It's located well inside the very heavily fortified Green Zone, although at this stage, of course, the Green Zone's perimeter in and of itself is being protected by the Iraqi security forces, although it is a unit that is very loyal to Shia Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. There are also, as you have been reporting, preparations underway for an evacuation should it actually reach that stage. Although I can tell you, Brooke, if we do reach that stage, Iraq will not be able to come back and recover from that kind of violence.
Arwa Damon, thank you. I see my next guest here nodding right along with you, a man who knows the violence in Iraq better than most, Michael Holmes. How many times have you been to Iraq now?
14 in all. Went up at the beginning and was there when the last U.S. troops came out in 2011 on the border there, and was most recently there in January.
Yeah. CNN international anchor. You were there as recent as January. And just quickly, before we get into the Q&A, let's just take a look at the lay of the land. As we look at Iraq and they're heading toward Baghdad, Syria here, porous border, moving southward.
Yeah. They basically, their headquarters, if you like, is here in Raqqa. This is in Syria. The border kind of runs down this way here. And that's where they were and based and doing damage to Bashar al-Assad. Now they've crossed over, of course, been heading south, gone through Mosul. I've been there many times. It's a huge city. And for them to take that is extraordinary. Tikrit, Saddam Hussein's birthplace. You know, to be getting down into here, they were already down here in Fallujah, Ramadi, other places like that. So they're knocking on the door. They're in a place called Baquba, 45-minute drive.
Listen, part of the conversation today is about could they actually seize Baghdad? Many people are saying there's no way. 9 million people versus what? Some maybe a couple thousand militants. But the eye is on the prize being Baghdad. If you were ISIS, if you were this militant group, what would your targets be? Typically in cases like this, it's the airport.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hear ISIS often being described as a ragtag group of terrorists.
Do you agree with that?
I don't think that they're ragtag. I think they're very well organised. I think they know what they're doing. They're operating in an operational way. They're operating as an army rather than a bunch of people going around and setting roadside bombs. They seem to have a plan. Yes, the airport would be, or as it's known, BIAP, Baghdad International Airport, would be a prime target because that would disrupt everything and it would stop people being able to get out.
But you think they're already there?
Well, look, you've got ISIS is already in Fallujah and Ramadi, parts of Ramadi in Anbar province. Again, only an hour or so from Baghdad. They've been there since the end of last year in force, running in there. They have access to Baghdad. They have their way in there. Look, I've heard people say, oh, there was a horrible bombing yesterday. These bombs are every day. When I was there in January...
You saw them?
Oh, yeah, every day. And there 2 days we had 6 bombs in an hour. So there are people inside Baghdad now with the capability to cause these problems. The targets were always Shiite, so it was Sunnis doing it.
Where did this group come from? Because for so many months, I say we, the U.S., and also we, CNN, were so focused on covering Syria. And I'm wondering if there were almost blinders on, focused so much in Syria, and you have, my producer put it almost like a snake pit of these militants. And correct me, fostering, strengthening, no authority. Yeah. And suddenly they're emboldened and they have this momentum. And boom, here they go.
Well, they were always there. They were part of the insurgency. I mean, you're talking about some brutal people, local guys, but what's happened is they moved into Syria. They were always down in Anbar province. They were doing their thing as part of the insurgency. When the US took them on in Fallujah and Ramadi, did them a lot of damage. These guys then regrouped, became what they are now. They went into Syria, started fighting, got a lot of international fighters with them now, grew, got richer as well.
One of the towns taken last week, weren't they taken by more, it was almost North African militants. I mean, from some of these videos, from what I understand from a general we're talking to later, they're using all of these, talking about propaganda as tools to get people from not necessarily Iraq or even this region to come in to fight.
A lot of people want to fight. If they're jihadis, they'll come from anywhere to fight. And I'll tell you one little statistic. Yeah. The most foreign fighters in Iraq during the war came from Eastern Libya, North Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
Who is strengthening them? Who is providing their money? Do they even care about cold hard cash when they have these weapons? They use violence?
Well, nobody knows for sure, but the thinking is that there are a lot of extremist Sunni individuals, wealthy people from places like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia as well, who are funding these guys. They also make their own money. They just picked up about $400 million in Mosul going to the banks, robbing the banks.
It's like the Wild West.
And they have the ability too, because up in Raqqa there, they have access to some of the oil pipelines. So they're getting oil money, believe it or not. They're well funded. Some estimates say they got $1 billion in the bank.
Michael Holmes, 14 times in Iraq. Come back. The story is not going anywhere. Thank you so much. Just ahead, I mentioned this general a moment ago. We'll talk live to this general about why President Obama's military options are not realistic at all. We'll walk through those. Plus, the U.S. captured the leader of this group terrorizing Iraq right now, but they let him go. And on his way out, he told a commanding officer, and I'm quoting him, "See you in New York." And back here at home, a father says the mother of his child has kidnapped their daughter because she doesn't want to vaccinate her. Hear from the father, coming up here on CNN.